The next change that we want to describe is peaks and low points. So a peak is a point which is higher than any other point for that variable. And a low point is the exact opposite. It is the lowest amount that a variable reaches relative to all previous and subsequent points that have been reached, right? So it's the lowest point, essentially. So what kind of structures can we use to describe peaks and low points? Well, we only have a very simple structure here, and that is very similar to the structures that we have seen before. I'll show you exactly how these structures can be used. So basically, you start with the subject, right? So I'll leave the structure here. We have the subject, which is going to be basically color-coded in green, because it's it's not very similar, but identical to the structure that we have used before. And then you're going to follow it with a verb phrase. So you could say that this structure is very similar to the verb phrase structure that we have seen before. And then you add your adverb to the end. So essentially, it is a verb phrase structure, but the verb phrases that we use have to describe peaks and low points. Let me show you what I mean by looking at a few examples here. So we are describing peaks and low points. All right, so we know what the structure is going to look like, and all we have to do is essentially review the format that goes into the verb phrase construction that we'll be using. Let me show you. So, for example, we start with the subject one more time. And then we have a verb phrase. And then finally we have an adverb. We covered this already, right? But I want to get the color coding right, because it's very helpful if you learn through this color coding system. It'll make your life a lot easier when it comes to the actual writing process, because I've had students tell me that when they're taking the test, sometimes they kind of see what needs to come next because they're familiar with the color pattern. So they kind of know, oh, whenever I have a subject, I need to follow it up with a verb, and that's what comes in, that red color, or the adverb. Oh, I forgot to mention the blue part. So as you can see, these the color coding scheme that you can see here can help you remember the structures and to use the structures accurately. Okay, so what are the verb phrases that we could use to describe peaks and low points? So we actually need to separate these two. We need one set of structures for describing peaks and one set of structures for perhaps describing low points. Let's start with peaks, right? So you could say it reached a peak. That's one structure that you could use. And again, we need to color code this in red, right? So it reached a peak. What else can we say? We could say it reached, and I'm using the past tense again because most of the sentences that we'll be writing will be in the past because the data has been collected in the past. The few exceptions are, when we're talking about the future. And a lot of the time you can adjust the verbs very easily. So instead of saying the number of students reached a peak, you could simply transform it to the number of students will reach a peak. So you just use the future tense instead, or will reach a high point. The opposite would be reached a low point, or you could use the structure it bottomed out, right? So the number of students reached a low point, or the number of students bottomed out. So these are the structures. So let's see how we can put these sentences into action. So I'll start with my subject, the number of students. That is going to be green, corresponding to this part of the structure. And then I need my verb phrase. So the number of students, and I want to talk about a peak. So reached a peak. What about the quantity? So immediately after peak, you're going to say a peak of 80%, right? And then you need to mention the time period. So let's say it's in the month of March. There, the number of students reached a peak of 80% in March. What if I want to talk about a low point? How can I do that? Well, to create some variety in my sentence structure, what I will do is I will start my sentence with the adverb of time. And so I will say, in March, the number of students reached a peak, right? Now, remember, the preposition that you use for time will depend on what the unit for time is. So for example, if it's happening during a month, we know that for months we use in. If you're talking about a particular, time of the day, again, you could say in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. If it's a particular, time on the clock, then you could say at 12 o'clock, at 1 p.m., right? Or maybe the peak happens in a duration. So you could say, between February and September, it reached a peak, something along those lines. So here we have in March, the number of students. And so we want to go with a different structure. This time we're going to say the number of students bottomed out. But the preposition for bottomed out is no longer of. It's actually at, right? So if you want to know what the prepositions are, the preposition for reached a peak is of, right? So reached a peak of, and then go ahead and mention whatever quantity it is. Reached a high point of, and once again, mention the quantity. Reached a low point of, so far everything can be described, the quantities using of, but then for bottom out, the preposition is, as I mentioned, at. So it bottomed out at this particular amount, and there you go. These are the structures that you could use to describe peaks and low points. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share this link with other people who may find this content useful. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.